Welcome to Barbells, Business, and Boobs, where we discuss navigating everyday life as lifters, business owners, and being a woman in a male-dominated industry. Today, we're going to talk about something that Christy and I always talk about off the podcast, and it is body image.
Yeah, what a fun topic. I'm just kidding. And I know you just threw up a story asking people, what they struggle with the most with body image. And that was only like an hour ago. And then you got a bunch of responses. So I know this residence resonates with a lot of our listeners because body image is tied so much to what we do. Like, every time, you go into a store, you get a compliment about your physique, or people ask you like, what do you do for a workout? So people correlate working out with how the effects with your body, and like a lot of times I know that when I was growing up, it's like, what workout to get rid of your saddlebags? And then you're like, oh, is there something wrong with bigger thighs? This is definitely like a really complex topic. And I know lifting has really helped us in body image, but also on the other hand, a lot of challenging thoughts come along with it too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's interesting too. So I put up the question and I got like half the response were from females, half were from males. And a lot of times people forget that this also affects males too. It's just not talked about as much. So I think next season we should have a man on and talk to him about this. But today we're not going to get too deep because this could be like a 2-hour conversation. But I just want to talk about kind of Christy and I's evolution of our body image and self-esteem, which go hand in hand, because I know that I've been aware of what my body looks like since I was probably about 7 or 8.
Yeah, which is crazy because like I have a neighbor who's 7 year like, I'm like so disconnected like kids and like what age they are, but I have a neighbor who's 7 years old and you're like, you're a baby. Like that
Yeah.
is so young. Like
Yeah.
even a 13-year-old you see, even a 20-year-old I see, I'm like, you look like a baby. But a 7-year-old like should just be riding their bike and not thinking
Yeah.
about it. So that's intense. And I'm the exactly same way. Like my like weird eating patterns like really
Mm-hmm.
started around 5th grade. So I was probably around 10.
Yeah. All right. So let's jump right into that. Let's talk about when you, I want to like when you first, your weird eating habits, was that when you first became aware? Like, I want to hear about that because I don't know this. For anyone listening, I actually don't know that Christy and I haven't talked about like our childhood.
Right. I know we haven't like gotten that deep, maybe like therapy, but not here. You know what? And I haven't thought about it like too much because you know that with eating disorders, a lot of it comes around control. And also like how people cope with anxiety. And like I was a really anxious kid. So a lot of like my eating problems was like fear of certain foods, like afraid of like getting sick, like a food making me sick. But with that came weight loss, and I started to really like being skinnier because I was never like a skinny small person. And especially in the 90s and early 2000s, really skinny body types were in.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I remember my idea was like I would eat a peach at like 2 p.m. during the day and then like dinner, and that's it. Like I had like that was like my strict schedule when
In
I was
fifth
a
grade.
little. Yeah. And then I would you know, back then I didn't play that many sports. I did dance and like figure skating. I don't really like soccer or anything like that, but like I knew that exercise, like from magazines, like could make you skinny. So I would just do a bunch of crunches. Like that was
Mm-hmm.
my idea of exercise. And then also sometimes running. And so running and a bunch of crunches. Um, but yeah, and also the more so like hatred and awareness of my body came during puberty. And I know a lot of us can relate because we start getting like all this different attention that's like super uncomfortable. So I think I can't speak for males, but at least for females, like around puberty and like when your body starts changing, that starts a lot when like pretty young for a lot of us now.
GMOs.
Makes you like hyper aware, of like your body, and like it's not comfortable. So you're kind of trying to figure out like what to do to change it, because you're just like not comfortable and you're comparing to other people and you're like
Mm-hmm.
10.
Yeah.
So what about you?
Yeah. So I was a runner when I was really, really young, just to kind of, I always liked to be outside. I mean, not much has changed if you know me. I think I had I would do like the paper route, whatever that job was called, and like run and do it or bike and just kind of became, I would say at first it was more like athletic performance. I was kind of always obsessed with that from a young age. I thought it was really cool to learn about. My mom was also a good influence. I say good influence because she was always in the basement lifting weights. We had a bench and stuff like that. But, I'm also self-aware enough at 31 years old to realize that I can see now that she had her own struggle. And I think that translated to me because she would always be talking about like wanting to look a different way, or just kind of like obsessed with like what she ate and what she fed us, which I'm thankful for because she passed on good habits. But I feel like I became very aware from a young age of what I looked like. So I guess it's a positive and a negative thing. I actually got spoken to in middle school. Miss Lee, my health teacher, my friend Jackie, like told on me that I was keeping a food diary in sixth grade because and I didn't have an eating disorder or anything. I literally was just like I thought like nutrition and calories and macronutrients, I thought learning about it was really cool. So I was keeping track of everything. And then, yeah, my friend thought that was obsessive. So the health teacher talked to me and, I wasn't like in trouble or anything, but she was just like, your friend's worried about you. She think you might have an eating disorder. And I was just like, no, I think it's fascinating that like I can eat more and then like maybe I'll get better at running. So that happened. So I would say, I had a good and a bad relationship with like body image and self-esteem. I would say it started getting it was pretty good in college. I would say after college, when I transitioned from Division 1 rowing and running in that body type to strongman. I started putting on muscle and upper body really easily. And I don't know, I feel like that's just when I became like obsessed with the scale and, always making sure I had to weigh in at 180. In my first like 6 months competing, I went up from 160 to 180 and it was like solid muscle. So I kind of just became very self-conscious and obsessed with the scale. And honestly, that's been my life like the past 10 years. Doing the whole bodybuilding stuff really, really, really fucked with my head for a while. I'm in a good place now, and that's taken me a lot of work. So it's been
Yeah.
lots of ups and downs.
Yeah. And I definitely want to talk about eventually the bodybuilding and with body image and stuff like that, because I've never done a bodybuilding show. But first, you said something that resonated was being a weight class athlete brings the awareness, right? Like I know a few episodes ago, I talked about how I loved powerlifting because before powerlifting, I was like really obsessed with getting smaller, and I got to 135 pounds, which for me is like tiny. Like to me, like I look at myself at 135 and I look like I'm 70 pounds. I'm so small. And I was obsessed with staying that weight and like being small. And then I found powerlifting, and it was like so it's just refreshing because the culture around it was like, eat Sour Patch Kids, eat carbs, yay. And then you get, you kind of heals you a little bit because you stop being afraid of carbs, and, you gain a little weight, you get stronger, you get muscle. But then, that, that, but then you like get really excited, or then you start being very aware of like, oh, I'm going up a weight class. Like when I first started powerlifting, I was 135 pounds. I gained weight, and I had like ended up cutting to the one, like a couple pounds to the 148 class. And
That
then
was
all of
your
a
first
sudden
powerlifting meet?
yeah. And then all of a
You
sudden I'm
started
like
off
in,
cutting.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
I
know.
just
I
want
would
to note
never make a
that.
client. I would never make a client
Yes.
cut weight, but I was only 2 pounds over or something.
Okay.
Like it was fine. But yeah, yeah. So, but I started up. I made all the mistakes. My first powerlifting meet, I did my opener in the back room. I didn't have a coach. I didn't know what I was doing. Like it was chaos. So I would never, I have big opinions on weight cuts in general. It's kind of like the same thing with steroids. Like where you got to be to like start thinking about weight cuts, but like, or steroids. Like first, let's just get stronger,
Yeah.
and grow into your weight class and actually build muscle and get experience, all that stuff. But yeah, I started at 148, and then all of a sudden I was competing in 165s, and eventually I was competing in the 181s. And so seeing yourself go up in weight, and then seeing your body change, like sometimes you feel really great, but then you might see something on social media, like someone more ripped than you, or your friend is like, all your friends are super jacked. And then of course, starting to get more conscious about the way your body looks. And
Hmm.
then it starts to kind of take away from your performance, because you might start under eating. You might, you might start like doing a little bit extra too much cardio, or, not focusing as much on your strength work and more so on your, just hypertrophy, which is good to an extent. But if like, obviously you're kind of get confused and try to do everything rather than being focused on what your goal is in your sport. So the poor body image and wanting to change is like kind of like always like looming over me, but sometimes it's louder, and sometimes it's
Yeah.
quieter. And when it's quieter, I can have more focus. And when it's louder, I'm not really as focused on my goal at hand. Now, of course, there are times I really do dive in and try to work on my physique. Like right now, I've been cutting for about 2 months, and I'm kind of like, well, it's okay if my strength kind of goes on the back burner right now, but there's a time and a place for that, and at least that's the appropriate time for that right now. But there's still a lot of like harsh, like complicated feelings um with that too. Like right now I'm cutting weight, and I'm down 10 pounds, and I'm still comparing
Wow. That's a
myself to other
lot.
people, right? Like, I'm down 10 pounds, but like, I don't look like that bodybuilder over there, but it's like, I'm not a bodybuilder. So it's like,
Yeah.
but it's all over. We've talked about the social media, all over my explore page, all over this and that. So, just making sure that I'm keeping focused on me and
Yeah.
my progress is worth, like you said, 10 pounds is a lot. So I
Yeah.
can't be down on myself because someone else I think looks better than me. It's like I've
Hmm.
made progress. So like, shut up, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. So the weight cut athlete thing, I think, is, a whole section, because pretty much every weight class athlete, I would say 90% of people have somewhat of an unhealthy relationship with the scale and food and dieting and all that. And so my friends would always tease me when I was in strongman. They're like, you're a bodybuilder at heart, because every time I'd weight cut, I would do the fast, aggressive approach where I'd lose like 10 pounds in a short period of time. And I just remember thinking it was so cool that like I could have abs just from like not eating carbs for a few days and then water cutting. And that was what, I actually always thought I'd be a bodybuilder when I was younger, because I was obsessed with like Dorian Yates and Arnold and Nicole Wilkins. And, then just strength fell into my lap. But doing all those weight cuts, it was when I was the first year I was competing. Like I said, I gained a lot of weight quickly, but I was still so middleweight division. Christy, do you remember when it was divided? It was 160 to 180, and then there was like a sub 165 class, something like that.
I don't know.
Okay, yeah, this was a while ago. They changed it now. It's just 180, 160 to 180. But there was like a subclass for a little while, and I was really fighting to stay under. I believe I had to be under 160 or 165. I can't remember. I'd have to look back at my notes. But I was at this time I was sitting naturally around like 175, and I was cutting to get to the 160, and then it just became harder and harder. So finally one day I was just like, fuck it, I'm just not going to diet and see where I am. And I trained hard. I was at that that dumb part of training, which we talked about in our injuries episode, where I was just like going hard. I was 24, so I was at the gym every night after work for like hours and hours, just hammering my body with events. And then I'd go to Chipotle after and all the food and then eat ice cream.
Mm.
I just didn't care. And I think I got up to like 185. So then I had to cut to 180, which was always pretty manageable for me. So I did that for a couple of years, just the constant cutting. And then I had was just reminiscing about it before this episode as someone asked me what the heaviest I'd ever been was. And it was the summer of 2017 when I was preparing for Strongest Woman in the World. Like I was eating very healthy. It was the first time I was like on a diet, but I was eating like, oh God, like 500 grams of carbs, like an insane amount of calories, like insane, girl. Like I'm talking one of my meals pre-training, I remember it was like 2 pieces of fruit. I think it was like 200 grams of oats, like something disgusting. So I was just packed. I was a big girl. So I was like 192 and I had to cut to under 180. And I was also going overseas. And it was
Oh my
just
gosh.
such a bad cut. Like my mom was worried about me. I felt like I was going to pass out. And then I promised myself after that, like, okay, you know what? I'm going to stay lean enough that I'm always within 5 pounds of my weight class. And I actually ended up dabbling with bodybuilding. So my natural weight started sitting, I would say my homeostasis weight was at like 175. So
Mhm.
I just kind of stayed there. And that's actually when you saw me competing, when you came to 2020 America's Strongest Woman. I remember it was the first, remember I didn't have a weight cut and I was like so excited.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, I had
That
no
was
weight.
that was awesome.
Yeah. So, and then bodybuilding is a whole different topic. So I don't know when you want me to get into that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, first of all, I'm trying to think of what I saw. There was there was a question about that on your page where someone asked you, what was it? Oh, sorry.
Today?
Okay. So yeah, the shift in bodybuilding towards wellness has its ripple effect out on the ideal female fitness physique. Beyond just bodybuilding, I have narrow hips and I'm lanky. I don't fit that body type, and I seem like mine is the second-rate option everyone is trying to fix or avoid. So it just kind of that question reminded me, and that statement is a lot of the shift from a lot of these amazing power lifters and strength athletes that shift over to bodybuilding, and now they're dual athletes, and you're one of them, who's awesome at both. um, but I know that has made me feel, and then a lot of my other clients feel, like start to, because we always compared ourselves to these lifters, and now they're in a sport about physique, so you still compare yourself to them, the
Hmm.
powerlifters who are now bodybuilders. And like, I'm not saying like, oh my god, like fuck them for switching over, like that's awesome, that's amazing, but like then it starts like, even if you don't realize it, it starts to kind of shape your brain. I mean, I've had a lot of clients who now want to go into, which is good, like they're influential, want to go into wellness or physique or some other bodybuilding category, but just interesting because it has influenced them. Whether or not it has anything to do with giving them a negative body image, it might not. They might just be inspired to go do that. But I know some people start to kind of compare their bodies even more just
Mm-hmm.
because of that. So I think it's been interesting. It's been awesome seeing these strength athletes slay, because it's kind of just like, told you so, guys. Like, we have lots of muscle, we're awesome. Like, you can slay in a strength sport and bodybuilding. That's super cool, but also makes people who may have looked up you before start thinking about themselves differently. Like, oh, do I need to look like that? Should
Yeah.
I be leaner like that? Or they kind of get confused, like, oh, I should be that lean and still be powerlifting and being really strong. So I just think it's interesting, because there's been a big shift and a big wave of people who want to go compete in bodybuilding now.
Mm-hmm. I love that question and I want to answer it in two parts. First, I'm going to answer it from the actual question, kind of like an overall theme. So,
Yeah.
times have changed, and a lot of that is because of social media. And I want to say, the term like muscle mommy, you say that to pretty much everyone our age knows what that is and aspires to be a muscle mommy. So it's good, more women want to put on muscle. It's not we're at an interesting time because we came into lifting when it was still taboo for women to have muscle.
Hmm.
Obviously, it's much more accepted now and praised, and I would say to some degree more of the ideal body type. Like you were saying, early 90s, it was like skinny, hip bones. Now it's definitely like big butts and thighs, which is good, but it's also negative. Like that girl said, she's never going to look like that. And I've struggled with that too, because it's like the ideal body type now is, a small, small waist, a huge, huge ass, big, big legs. And you'll see that on social media, we were talking about this in a couple of our episodes, but it's so easy to Photoshop, and a lot that goes into looking like that. Yes, some of it is excellent genetics and extremely hard work, no doubt in that. But some of it is fake. There's BBLs now, there's Photoshop, there's so much you can do. And it is hard when you're constantly comparing and striving to look like that when it's something that doesn't even exist. And social media, like you open it up and I'm sure I go to my explore feed, just search wellness. I believe the wellness division came to be, I don't remember the year. I think it was introduced like 2019 or 20, right before the pandemic.
Hmm. I think
And
it was around there.
yeah, I actually remember my friend called me, and it was Charity, and she was like, "Oh, I have this good idea. It's going to be more natural, not as much upper body and big legs." And quickly, it has transformed into something that is like cartoon character. Like, and don't get me wrong, it's like, it's amazing. And I think a lot of people, when something is like, whether you're looking at like an amazing like Ferrari or anything, it's like you're going to stare because it's different, right?
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think what are my thoughts on like the wellness division in general?
Yeah, and just people
Um,
wanting to obtain that body type.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's so crazy because bodybuilding. Okay, so with wellness, honestly, I don't know much about the creation of it, but like, if what you said is true, like they wanted something more natural, softer, more feminine, just because I know they're trying to get away from, which obviously I don't have a problem with this, but like the super bodybuilder woman, just because it wasn't as popular and they wanted to, maybe appease more people and bring more people in the sport with wellness. But then, of course, like bodybuilding has these are extreme people who want to do what it takes to win and, are super dedicated and change their bodies. And, they also are just always trying to have the approval of the judges. So, I mean, it's just naturally bound to happen that something that's supposed to be like a little more natural, softer look has evolved into like super hot action hero figures,
Yeah, action hero.
that's more on it rather than like natural, softer. I don't know what they're supposed to be, but obviously they're still bodybuilders, but into very unattainable because unless you're obviously a, pro, unattainable, not for people into bodybuilding, but for like, let's say like, Joe Schmo on the street. It's just not something you're gonna like become overnight, right? So it's just like a little bit more extreme look, which is really like attractive, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's another another category of bodybuilding of
Yeah, exactly.
extreme physiques that are the top, 1% of the industry, like looks wise. I guess beauty's is the eye of beholders, um, but the look, I don't know. It is very interesting because it has changed a lot, and it's only been like what, like 3 or 4 years since it started.
Yeah, I'll be very curious to see what happens with that. Definitely. We have to also remember, Chrissy, that we are in the fitness industry. So we might think that that look is cool because I've asked other people, like other girls I train that aren't, I've asked them what they think and they actually don't like it. And men too. It's interesting to me. So,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
anyways,
I mean, yeah, what we think is looks good is definitely not. Yeah, I mean, like all I get is barf emojis on my page, so I know that maybe the most of the world doesn't like it, but there's a big chunk of people who do. But I mean, that's the thing though, when you train and you're the one that's putting in the work into your body, that's what breeds the confidence, you know? So like, it's not like you're looking for other people's approval, but it's just gonna, training just makes you more and more confident in your own body. So, you know, it doesn't matter if they think it's attractive or not.
Yeah. Now I want to go back and answer that question from my own standpoint as someone that has competed both in, strong woman, powerlifting, and then bodybuilding. So I'm going to be completely honest. I don't think I've ever been open and honest about this because I tried to have that like stoic face on social media where I wasn't affected by negative body image post show, and I was. So I thought, I'm educated enough. I do this for a living. I help women with body image. It's not going to affect me. I'm just doing this for another goal that I want to pursue. I've always wanted to step on stage. Okay. And I will say, because people would always ask me during the process, like, what's the difference between strength sports and bodybuilding? And for me, a very high level competitive athlete, there was no difference. Okay. I approached it the same way. I just looked at dieting like part of the process. You know, I was actually at the gym less, I was doing cardio more, and eating was a big focus. But for me, it was just like that narrow eyed, eye on the prize goal that I wanted. And my goal when I started was to get a pro card. And I do believe I could have obtained that. But over the last year, I really, really thought about what it did to me mentally and what it would do to me physically had I gone forth and pursued that goal. So during the process, I loved it. I felt healthy. I had a period until I was like 4 weeks out. And let me just backtrack a little bit because I've only stepped on stage twice, but I've done the whole bodybuilding process 3 times. I've done the prep. The first time when I was 4 weeks out, I broke my wrist. The second time I was a couple weeks out and COVID hit. So the third time was when I finally like completed the process of getting to the stage. So leading up to it, I loved every second of it. I was so, focused, dialed in. And then, yeah. And then after my second show, when you start taking progress pictures, I remember like the scale going up, seeing my body get softer, seeing the lines disappear. I was like almost ashamed at how I looked. And, I would talk to people. People are very open and honest that that's just part of the process. But until you've experienced that, you don't know what it's like because unlike strength sports where you hit a PR and you might be, you can pretty much obtain, I would say, like if you hit, 100% lift, you're not always going to hit that PR, but you should be within like 80% of it at all times, right? With body, your body's at 100%. And as soon as you step off stage, you're getting worse by the minute. And, those few weeks post show, like I just was like, oh my God, I look like shit. I felt so ugly. And you're hungry. It's just a really bad, and your hormones are messed up. And I had a really bad, I didn't really rebound in the sense like I got fat or anything. I still looked healthy. I still looked good. But I remember like showing my mom pictures and be like, oh, how fat do I look? Like I would start saying those attitudes about myself, which I know looking back isn't true. But when you're in that mindset and you feel like you're a foreigner to your own body, it literally took me, I competed over 2 years ago. It took me until recently to be happy with my body again, which I never thought that I'd experience that. So that was a long, long process and part of the reason why I don't want to step on stage again. Although it's always in the back of my mind, like I kind of do because I think now that I'm more educated on what I would do differently and how I would approach that. But at the same time, I just don't want to dabble with my health. I'm women's physique. I will never be women's wellness. Women's physique is lean, like lean, lean, lean. And I'm 31 years old. And I do know that, someday I want kids. And it's just to get a pro card. I don't want to just compete to step on stage. I want to compete for a pro card. And to get to that level, I would have to do drugs. That's just, I've done drugs, but I'm not willing to do what it would take. And that's a big step for me to admit. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I was totally going to ask you, I was saying, knowing what you know now about your experience, would you go back and do it again? But you just answered that. And I think that's why it's not really why I've stayed away from it. I would love to see myself, like, I would love to prove to myself that I could look like that, you
You could,
know?
yeah.
So that's why I would love to do it. Um, is my, and you don't know until you try it, but is my heart in that sport? A lot. Really, it's not. um,
Okay, so that's a
just
good
because
direction.
of the judging is so subjective as well. Like, it's just, I would hate to go up there like my best and, like, okay, well, you still didn't win. Um, like, but in the gym, like, or at a show, at least you're like, oh yeah, like I hit the log 150 for 7 reps. That was a rep PR. I hit my goal.
Hmm.
And I'm sure there's like kind of stuff like that you can do with bodybuilding with like, your overall performance, your leanness, all that stuff. But it just doesn't appeal to me. But I would love to see what I look like that and do it once. But what stopped me is mostly just it would mean taking time away from pursuing my goals in strongman. And like I feel like I don't have that much time left because I spent so much time injured and I'm getting older and don't have much time to dedicate to it. So maybe one day. But I definitely think I am susceptible to being upset, like too obsessive, which a lot of bodybuilders are just obsessive too anyway, just have the personality type.
Uh,
Right. So it might be appealing to them. And then also like I'm starting to get to the point where I want to live life more.
mm,
Like I want to go travel, like have, and obviously there's off season stuff, but like be able to go travel and like go get a pastry in a fancy cafe in Italy, stuff like that.
yeah,
Eat cake at like my niece's birthday, stuff like that. Like it's more important to me, but it's definitely easy for me to say because I've never done a volleyball competition. A bodybuilder might hear what I'm saying and be like, oh, she doesn't want enough. Well, I don't. but also, but I would love to look like that. Like I think it looks great. I'm a person who likes that look. So yeah, I mean, one day would I want to push my body that far for sure. But I know it would mess with my body image
yeah,
because my body image is already kind of all over the place. Um, so yeah, I can't lie and say that, I am pretty confident in some areas and it just depends on the day too of like
yeah,
how I feel. It's so interesting how like, when you wake up and you're a pound over what you normally are, you're like, I'm so fat. And then if you're like 0.1 or 0.2 pounds under what you normally are, you're like, I feel so skinny and good today. Like those things can still dictate my mood a little bit, but doesn't consume it just because I'm kind of like you. I'm very interested in like what certain foods do to my body and what high carb, low carbs, how I can come and manipulate those things, um, and how it affects body weight. So just like knowing the science behind everything makes it a little bit more of just like data rather than um, putting so much emotion into it. Like the
yeah.
pounds are just like something I have to watch just because I know I'm in a weight class, but it's just kind of showing me what my body's doing and my hydration and
Mhm.
inflammation and all that stuff. Really, it's just interesting.
I definitely want to talk about the emotions behind it because, like you said, with knowing the science behind it. So I've been quote unquote perfect with my nutrition in terms of like knowing exactly what I'm putting in my body. Like I was the girl that was neurotic about it. Like if I had 5 ounces of chicken, it wasn't 5.1, it was five. Like I was to the T for so long. And about a year ago, in order to be a better coach and start like actually helping girls with like the whole scale thing and the numbers, I started to approach it a little bit differently in terms of like food being more of a mood. So I think in, not labeling foods as like bad or good. And when you're less restrictive, your overall relationship with food and measuring and all that becomes better. Because if you go into like a cheat meal, so like I like on prep when I had a cheat meal, I'd go into it like, oh, I'm never gonna have this sushi again, or I'm never gonna have this burger again. And I would like savor it, just like the dopamine hit I would get, like it was like a drug. I was like people wouldn't want to watch me eat. I remember I'd be like at the sushi place, like licking my plate clean because I just like couldn't get enough of it.
I know that feeling.
Now I'm more like you said, like if you want to be traveling and like have in Italy and like have a bite to eat, like I was actually just saying that last night, like because I'm going hiking tomorrow, and I asked my friend, "Do you want to bring food?" Because they're also like bodybuilder, and I was like, I'm kind of in this new mindset where like, yeah, 75% of the time I'm gonna bring my chicken and rice, but like 25% of the time I'm not gonna. And it's been really cool because my body actually, I'm starting to realize like less neurotic, so I feel better. My
Hmm.
mental, so much of like the mental space of like food prepping and like measuring everything out to the T. I don't really do that as much, and I look better. I feel better. I have more headspace to do other things. So it's really cool, and it's so new for me that it's exciting. But at the same time, like there is a time and a place to measure food. It's just I'm on the extreme side of it where I have been like 6% body fat, so
Yeah.
it's like it's easy for me to say. I don't want everyone listening, if you're dieting or trying to like lose weight, like I don't want you to think that you don't have to do that because there is a time and a place for it.
Right. And it gets easier too. Like it's definitely a process like we talked about before. Like I started off very obsessive and, lost 30 pounds. I was 135 pounds. I was eating 1,200 calories a day and doing tons of cardio. And then I found powerlifting. I was kind of like free, and I kind of went to the opposite end a little bit too much, right? And
Yep, that's part of
I've
it.
had a lot of ups and downs, and eventually, you got to find, your quote unquote balance. But like you said, sometimes it's not completely balanced. Like if you want to go for a goal, like right now, I'm dieting. So yeah, I mean, I plan my diet in between vacations. I know that Friday when I go on vacation, I'm just taking a week break. I lost 10 pounds. I planned it like last few months have been kind of boring on the weekends. Sorry, Gary, we can't really go on dates. And that was a sacrifice, but I'm not going to be obsessive over our vacation that I spent a bunch of money on, and I'm not going to like just be miserable. Right. So,
So you're
the,
gonna eat sushi with me?
yes. Oh, yeah. We're going to lick the plates. We're going to lick, yeah, I get to see Brittany on Friday. We're going to lick the plates clean. And that's great. And then when I come
Wait.
back, I'll be on track and it won't get me out of control because I have, you go through experiences and eventually you find that healthy balance. And honestly, life is short. You want to hit your goals, but you also need to like not be so stressed all the time.
Yeah. Hold on.
Right.
Side
Like
note. Can
what?
we please take a picture licking our plates clean because we'll release
Yeah,
this episode after?
there we go. That's perfect. We need a cover photo of just like the plates clean. Poor Gary's gonna be like,
All right. So
yeah.
I kind of want to wrap it up with what do you tell people, like clients, and what advice do you have for dealing with body image? And I can tell you what I've done that's worked for me.
Yeah. I mean, comparison really is the thief of joy. Like you need to find joy in like your own process and give yourself kudos for the achievements and progress you're making. And that's really what's going to help build your confidence. um, Keep those blinders on. I know it's for me, what I've had to do is mute a lot of people or unfollow people who maybe I obsessively compare myself to body wise. And it's nothing personal. It's just like that is just I'm in control of my own behavior, and that kind of helps like my thoughts throughout the day. So and also self-deprecating humor. A lot of us, I used to do that all the
Deprecating, yeah.
time, and I that's sometimes funny. You can throw it around, but like there are people who are all constantly talking themselves that way, putting on their stories and stuff like that. Just like um, challenge yourself every time you like say something negative about yourself, even if it was just a joke.
Yeah.
um that's helped me a lot. So
That
what
was
about you?
actually that was actually one of my goals about a year ago was to stop the self-deprecating humor because when I was at my kind of like worst mentally in terms of body image,
Hmm.
I'd put like stories up because it's still my job to interact and stuff on social media. So I'd be like, oh, I'm a thick girl now, like eating good, like make and put up like there's a 2 Chainz song called Thick, or I'd be like thick with three
Hmm.
C's, like just joking about it. And I was like, no, I'm gonna stop doing that because it's just stupid. But something I did that really helped is I actually stopped taking progress pictures because I know now how to look at my body. I rather look at it in videos or use other biofeedback such as measurements. And not for me, it's just like it's very triggering for me
Mhm.
because if I take progress pictures, I have to get into my physique poses. And I still have kind of like, it's kind of sad for me as an athlete because I did have that. It's like the one athletic goal that I haven't
Mhm.
obtained. And again, I know I could, I just don't want to do what it takes. It's just very triggering for me to get into those poses and take pictures. And at first, when I stopped doing it, it felt weird. I was like, oh, I'm being lazy. I'm letting myself go. And now that it's been like 6 months since since I haven't done those poses, I'm starting to feel better. Like I'll still take a picture. Like I know how to pose differently when I'm dressed up or like at the gym or something. And that feels good for me. But like, waking up first thing, getting in my posing suit. And that's, I actually still have my posing suit. I was thinking about selling it, but something is like, I still need to hold on to it. So I did
Yeah.
that. That helps a lot. And I'll actually have clients take breaks from progress pictures sometimes. And then something else I did that's going to sound corny, but again, when I was at my worst and like constantly waking up feeling ugly and fat, I started a gratitude journal where literally like every day I would write down in the morning, especially before I went on social media, like something that I was, happy for. And a lot of times I was just like repeating myself, like I'm grateful to go on a walk today and like my back
Mhm.
doesn't hurt or something. But that seemed
That's
to help.
so funny because I have a gratitude journal that I just started a couple months ago. Um, and it's usually like, I'm grateful my back doesn't hurt. I'm grateful over our walks. It's so funny. But it does help because I remember back in the day, I was like, I read Josh Bryan's Grounded by Gratitude.
Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
loved that book, but I was still struggling to like how do people have gratitude? Like I was struggling for a while. But it's something, yeah, you have to work on, and then you're like, yeah, I mean, the writing down every day does help. And I know it sounds like woo woo or like just too simple, but I mean,
Yeah.
if you have trouble, with that feeling too, it does help. And then my diet coach he's the one who suggested it, but has me doing cursive because like
Oh,
it's yeah, just because it kind of like wakes up your brain in the morning. And when the first day that I did it, I seriously had like look up a few like I was like writing cursive and I like there's a few times I was like did a G backwards. I was like, I forgot how to do this. And yeah, now I'm like, now I can write cursive again.
yeah, stick
Mhm.
with that. I'm so happy you're doing it. So I did it religiously. I didn't miss a day for 6 months. And then I felt like I was at a good point. So now what I do is I do it in my head before bed.
Mhm.
I'll be like, oh, today was fun. I'm grateful for this. I'm grateful for this person. Just to myself, it takes like 30 seconds. And if I ever did need to go back to the journal, I would. I still journal in a different capacity, but some days I like kind of force myself to do it. So I think it's a really, really good practice for someone to get into. And it might feel foreign and weird at
Mhm.
first, but it's
Yeah.
proven to help. So
Right. And it also gives you a ritual, a habit in the morning to do to start your day. I mean, for me, that's like I have my like certain things I do in the morning and then my day starts. It just helps you get going. And just be a little for grateful for what you have because we're just like, no matter what, someone's always gonna look better than you, someone's always gonna be stronger than you. And those people are comparing themselves to other people. We're all just comparing ourselves. So it sounds cheesy, but it really is just like going within yourself and being happy with what you got and appreciating the work that you do for yourself.
exactly. And just one little thing to add on to that, since you talked about like the habit of journaling and stuff, something that I do again religiously, and on the days that I don't do it, I don't feel good. I always tell myself, so I don't bring my cell phone into my bedroom. I leave it out on,
Hmm.
the kitchen. And first thing in the morning, I feed the dog, put different clothes on. I get outside, I put my phone in my fanny pack, and I get outside and I don't look at my phone for a few minutes. Like I always say, sky before screen. And again, on the days, like, of course, there are times, like, if I have an athlete weight cutting or something that I have to be on my phone super early, but I just notice because then I'm just tempted to go on social media. And it's like, then you
Hmm.
start your day comparing yourself. And I feel gross.
Yeah, I 1,000% agree. And that kind of goes back to we have a tip Tuesday we need to put out, but with like the monitoring your social, like having scheduled social media time or not, do not disturb modes and stuff like that, where you don't look at your phone, and the no phone in the bedroom is like such a good idea. Just because, yeah, before you go to bed and when you wake up, at least just be with yourself and writing your gratitude journal instead of comparing yourself to some random person on the internet. That's honestly probably would solve 50% of people's self-image problems,
Yep, I
in my
agree.
unprofessional opinion.
I don't know. My
Like,
unprofessional
yeah, I
opinion
don't know. I
too.
just think that it helped me a lot. So
Yeah. So just know that, Christy and I still struggle with body image stuff. I feel like it's one of those things that you just kind of learn to tame, learn whatever practices and habits work best for you, but it's something that's always going to be prevalent. And I know I deal with a lot of moms, especially like post baby. So I think it's just always going to be something that you need to be consciously aware of in the world we live in. So feel free to leave a comment about your own experience. And if there's any men out there, message us, because I would love to talk to you. Because again, I think I know from dating them and being around them and just talking to them that like men struggle too. So I would love to have you be open and honest about it.
yeah, let us know what your experiences. Comment, like, share, please.
Yes.
We've been loving doing this podcast. We'd love to keep on going more. We're already planning our second season. Lots of fun stuff coming up. But yeah, stay tuned for some more shenanigans. I get to see Brittany next week, and then in a couple weeks after that. So
Yee.
lots of fun stuff coming up. But yeah, enjoy.